Hey, what's good? This is Brandon C. Kennard, and welcome to another episode of My Eye on Sports. Before I begin, there was a lot of things to talk about. Before I begin, I just want to send a special shout out. I want to send my prayers and condolences to the family of Freddie Gray. Truly was a unfortunate incident that happened out there in Baltimore. Hoping the well-being for all the citizens in Baltimore. What those cops allegedly did to that poor young man. It's truly disgusting, and I really hope that justice is served there. But at the same time, I just hope that the citizens out there continue to keep their protests peaceful and nonviolent, and hopefully things can get back to somewhat normalcy out there in Baltimore pretty soon. All right, let's transition to sports. I'll start off by talking about baseball. That's right, I said baseball. For the first time, I'm going to talk about a little baseball. Congratulations, I want to send out to Alex Rodriguez to hitting his 660th home run, tying Willie Mays for fourth place all time. Even though Alex Rodriguez is not a saint, and he certainly has had his troubles in the past, especially with PEDs and other personal problems, I think it's truly a big deal when you hit that many home runs in this day and age. And a lot of people they want to pass judgment on him and on that accomplishment. The Yankees, what may be the biggest story, as the Yankees was supposed to pay him $6 million as per his contract, but they're trying to get out of not paying the contract because of the fact that he was suspended for PEDs. I think that's truly unfair. I mean, like I said, Alex Rodriguez is not a saint, but last time I checked, baseball contracts are supposed to be fully honored, and it's not like the NFL where you can just get cut or you can, have your contract voided or altered because of an incident. But I really hope that situation gets resolved. It looks like they're gonna have to go to court and settle that in arbitration. But I truly hope that that situation gets resolved. And I am rooting for Alex to get his money. I think he deserves it. Again, 660 home runs is a big deal. It's just a shame that even though the Yankees are in the mix for first place in their division, the biggest story might be the fact that they may be going to court to trying to hold money from one of their players. We'll just see how that shakes out. All right, the NFL draft is in the books. I don't think there were too many surprises in the draft. I mean, Jameis Winston went first as predicted to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There was a bigger story about Marcus Mariota going to the Titans. There wasn't a lot of certainty where Mariota would land, and Tennessee certainly wasn't given any clues to what they were going to do. A lot of people thought they were going to go with someone else and maybe trade the pick, but instead they took Mariota. And it looks like they believe that he may be their guy going forward. Picking a guy as second overall pick is a pretty big deal. And Zach Mettenberger, it really upset me to hear that he was talking about he wanted to be traded. I mean, Zach, you were a 6th-round draft pick last year. You only played a few games. You didn't light the world on fire in Tennessee. It's not like they were supposed to hand you the job. If you're not going to stay there and fight for the job, I don't know if you deserve to be in the NFL, my man. You were a 6th-round pick once again. And, nothing's going to be handed to Mariota. Once you go into training camp and fight with the guy, training camp battle, and just win the job outright. You get traded. I don't think there's many teams in the NFL that you're going to start for right away, given that you only have a few games experience. And like I said, you didn't light the world on fire. And I just don't see how you can win this situation. I think you should just tighten up your skills, get ready for camp, and try to beat Mariota out. Worst case scenario, you end up being a solid backup quarterback, and then maybe your stock rises, and then a trade would be more feasible for you. I just don't know, man. I hope you get it together. You being an LSU former player, hopefully things will work out for you. But I don't think trade's in the books for you right now. So we'll see what happens with that situation. Well, the Dallas Cowboys, they tried to make another splash. They ended up taking Randy Gregory in the second round. Here's a guy that was troubled. He's had a lot of off the field problems. So it was definitely a big risk when you consider the fact that he's a first round talent according to a lot of draft experts. But he ended up going in the second round to the Cowboys. Now, hey, it's a big high risk reward type deal. I mean, if Randy Gregory keeps himself out of trouble, he can be a guy that, and he plays to his potential, he can be a guy that can really do big things for the Cowboys. They certainly could use that edge rusher on defense. Last thing the NFL needs is another problem player. They're trying to recover from the whole Adrian Peterson, Ray Rice, and Greg Hardy debacle. So hopefully, this is a guy that can, do big things and stay out of trouble, and maybe he can be a positive story for the NFL for once. It's really going to be up to him. It's really going to be up to him. The team can do all they can for him. They can put him in many programs. They can have him around many positive people, even around guys that maybe had trouble past, and they were able to recover from that. But it's ultimately going to be up to Randy Gregory whether or not his NFL career is a success or a failure. And that could also determine the Dallas Cowboys' fate going forward as to how far they can go. Well, the Atlanta Falcons, I felt they had a real strong draft. In a way, they took the guy that personally, as a Saints fan, I wanted. They took Vic Beasley in the first round. He's a highly touted edge rusher as well. And I was really hoping that he could have fell to the Saints later on in the first round, but Atlanta smartly scooped him up with their pick, and I think it was a good coup for them. If Vic Beasley pans out, I tell you, he can really transform that Atlanta defense, and really, they're not lacking much. So if their defense is able to catch up with their offense, they could very well be like the Saints were in 2009. It remains to be seen, new head coach Dan Quinn there. If he's able to put his imprint on that defense with that already high potent offense, it's no telling. Atlanta could be the class of the NFC South. That's very hard for me to say, and it'll be even harder for me to see if that indeed happens in the future. But I have to tell you, Saints fans, they really had a strong draft. They even got Tevin Coleman in the third round, the running back, and I think he can end up starting for them right out of the gate. And he can do electrifying things out there on the field. Like I said, Atlanta's not there very far off. I mean, they may need some tinkering with their offensive line. Of course, their defense is going to have to play better. But if those things happen, I tell you, Atlanta could, again, be the class of the NFC South. And that's a scary and yet frightful thought for Saints fans, including myself. Speaking of the Saints, I must say I was a little clouded with what they did in the draft. I think they did get some good players, and they did address some needs. But I think their first pick I wasn't sold on. They drafted Andrews Pete, the offensive tackle. I didn't think offensive tackle was necessarily a need, and when you consider the fact that the Saints were 7-9 last year and their defense was near the bottom of every category, and it really held the team back, and you knew this was a unit that needed to be bolstered. I just felt like with that 13th pick, they should have went defense. Or if they couldn't find a guy, that maybe they wanted Vic Beasley as well. And maybe when they couldn't get him, they just decided to go with the best player available. But I felt like maybe they should have traded that 13th pick, got some more value for that pick, and maybe address some needs down the line in the draft. I know they did have a lot of picks, so maybe they felt like they didn't need to trade down. But I just don't know. The Pete pick, I'm not saying that Pete won't be a great player down the line. I just don't know if he's going to feel an immediate need with the team into next season. I mean, when you consider the fact, if you're going to tell me that Zach Strief is not going to be with the team, or if you're going to tell me that Zach Strief is going to be moved to guard, which Sean Payton has already said is not going to happen. So if he indeed is, being truthful and saying that, Zach Strief is going to stay with the team, and he's going to stay as a tackle, and Pete's not going to be moved to guard, or he's going to stay a tackle, then I really don't understand the pick. And again, that's not saying that Pete couldn't be a valued player down the line, but just for the 2015 season, I have to question that pick. So hopefully he'll prove me wrong, and hopefully I would love to be proved wrong. Hopefully that's what happens in this case, because like I said before, the Saints really had to have a solid 2015 NFL draft class. They had too many needs, especially on defense, and I just feel like they did address some needs. I mean, they did get Stephon Anthony, the linebacker. I did like that pick. Also, maybe a little surprisingly, they drafted a quarterback in the third round, Garrett Grayson. This is a guy who is looked to be possibly Drew Brees' replacement. Who knows how soon, but the fact that he was drafted tells me that they are looking toward the future. And whether or not it's warranted or not, you have to say that, eventually it's going to have to happen. So if Grayson is the guy, that was a good pick for the Saints. I just felt like overall they didn't address a few needs, especially if they had any needs on offense. I felt like it was either wide receiver or tight end. When you consider the fact that they traded Jimmy Graham and Kenny Stills. So you subtract two guys from your offense, two guys who were contributors, and you don't add anybody in the draft, and you didn't really add anybody in free agency. That tells me that they must have confidence with the guys they have in-house. Benjamin Watson is a viable tight end, but he hasn't really blown it out of the water with his statistics the last couple of years with the Saints. That's not to say that those numbers can't improve with Jimmy Graham now gone. Josh Hill was someone who was a viable weapon as well, especially last season when Jimmy Graham was injured. But again, I mean, is he gonna step up and emerge into a bona fide tight end? Is he gonna get the playing time? Is what's gonna happen there? It's a question mark that's gonna warrant watching. Going into the 2015 season. As far as the receiver position goes, I mean, like I said, you subtract Kenny Stills. Obviously, you still have Brandon Cooks and Marcus Colston. But after those two guys, you don't really have much. You have Nick Toon, someone who showed a few splashes last season late in the year when the season was pretty much already down the drain. And you have some guys who are unproven like Brandon Coleman and Seantavius Jones. Sean Payton is said to be very high on them, but we haven't seen what he's supposedly high on yet. So the training camp is going to bear watching, and the preseason is going to be huge, because if those two guys do emerge into huge playmakers, they'll prove me wrong, and that's nothing more I would like to see happen. But if they bomb and they do not pan out the way Sean Payton thinks they will, then again, the draft selections that they made are going to be questioned, because there were a lot of good receivers that were taken in this draft. And if they turn out to be stars, they're going to be left wondering why the Saints did not take one of these receivers in the draft. As far as other teams and what they did, the Denver Broncos, they traded up to get Shane Ray. This is a guy who was another highly touted pass rusher. Unfortunately, he got in some trouble the week leading up to the draft with marijuana. And he was also coming off an injury, so it was kind of like two strikes against him, but the Broncos decided to move up and get him. Obviously, Denver's on the cusp of being a championship team. They've been close the last few years. They're definitely going forward. They're all in. So if Shane Ray works for them, that could be a definite positive move for them. Shane Ray, even with the question marks, he can definitely make an impact for a team like Denver, who you can never have enough pass rushers. So I guess that's what Denver was thinking. And when you consider the fact that one of their main guys is DeMarcus Ware, a guy who's probably in the twilight of his career, I think that might be a good pickup for the Broncos. But Shane Ray's going to have to stay out of trouble. That's the obvious thing. Again, the NFL, they definitely want to keep problem players down to a minimum. All right, the NBA playoffs are now in the semifinal stage, and this is definitely my favorite round of the playoffs. Mainly because I think this is where you get the more competitive series going. All four series have already started. In the Eastern Conference, the Washington Wizards, like I said before, these guys are looking very strong. They took game one in Atlanta, and I think the way they did it just showed what I was saying about what the Wizards have. I mean, this is a team that they are still overall young and inexperienced in a sense, but Paul Pierce just brings that veteran moxie. And then you have two guys like Brandon Beal and John Wall. These guys, they're warriors, man. They really play hard. John Wall's really stepped up his game. Bradley Beal's doing a good job. Unfortunately, they're dealing with a little bit of injury problems right now. John Wall didn't play in game 2 last night, and they did lose that game. But I do expect him to come back strong when the series shifts to Washington. And, as far as the Atlanta Hawks go, they're a team that relies a lot on ball movement and hitting open shots. They're not a bad team. I've said in the past, I'm just not sold on them. But they're not a bad team. They're just not a team that I think has that guy to close out games and win series for you. They have some very good players. They seem to have a very good coach. But when it comes playoff time, you need a guy. You need that guy that can really, really close a game. And they have some really good players. They have T. They have Corver. They have Millsap. They have Horford. But which one of these guys are you going to say is your closer? Which one of these guys are you going to say when you need a basket that this is the guy I'm going to go to? He's going to turn the momentum in our favor, and he's going to bring us home and win a critical game or win a critical series. I just don't think Atlanta has that player. You can make the argument that there were teams in the past who didn't have that guy, but they still won championships. But let's face it, those teams are very, very rare. The one team that may come to mind is the Pistons in 2004. But no disrespect to them, I felt like the reason why they won that championship was more about what the Lakers weren't than what the Pistons were, if you get my drift. Also, you can make an argument about the Spurs, but let's face it, the Spurs they have key contributors. Even though Tim Duncan's aging, he's still a guy that can get you a big basket. Playing pick and roll with Tony Parker, that's a big deal as well. So, and they also have an emerging star with Kawhi Leonard. So, I don't think that the Spurs really compare to the Hawks very much. But this Hawks team, if they're going to win this series, they're going to have to continue to make jump shots, because the Wizards, they're playing smart basketball. And like I said, John Wall and Paul Pierce, they're really doing a great job leading this team. And for some reason, I just like this Wizards team. I definitely think they're going to beat the Hawks. I think they're going to beat the Hawks in 6 games. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. The Chicago Bulls and the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're definitely battling. They've played one game. They've completed one game, I should say, up to this point. Cleveland, LeBron, he really looked like he missed Kevin Love and J.R. Smith in the first game, and it looks like he came up a little short in game 1. He even blamed himself for not winning game 1. But I think it has to do more with what this Bulls team is all about. Man, Jimmy Butler, this guy battles hard, man. He plays hard, and I don't think there's a guy more deserving of a good contract after this season. I believe his contract is up after this year. If the Bulls aren't going to pay him, somebody's going to pay him. This guy can play at both ends of the floor. He really played some real good defense on LeBron down the stretch in game 1, and that was huge to lead to that victory. Derrick Rose, he like I said, he's beginning to look more and more like Derrick Rose every game in this playoff as this playoffs goes along. He's really provided a spark for this Bulls team, because Derrick Rose, for the Bulls to win now, doesn't have to play out of his mind. He doesn't have to score 35 points and get 9 rebounds and 8 assists every game. This is a guy who can, just chip in wherever needed. He's the guy maybe they look to down the stretch when the shot clock's going down or when they need a big basket. But Derrick Rose does not have to be the super player that he once was for the Bulls to have success. They have other guys like Jimmy Butler, like I just mentioned. They have Pau Gasol. Joakim Noah is an all-star center, and he sometimes doesn't even finish the game in the fourth quarter. They have Pau Gasol playing the center position because they have guys like Taj Gibson coming off the bench. This Bulls team is loaded. They're physical. They're very talented, and I think they're going to give Cleveland all they can muster. If Cleveland doesn't win game 2 in this series, I think they're in trouble, and I think that they're going to lose this series eventually. I'm going to give the Bulls 6 games to win this series as well, only because I think LeBron is going to play hard enough to steal one in Chicago, and I just think that when you look at it, all the way, I think LeBron's going to miss Kevin Love more than he wants to believe. And I think that Cleveland's bench is going to come up short against Chicago and their suffocating defense. Like I said, I give the Bulls 6 games. I think they move on, and they're going to set up a series between the Bulls and the Wizards in the Eastern Conference Finals. Moving over to the West, and the Golden State Warriors, they were really hot until last night, losing game 2 to the Grizzlies. I tell you, you want to talk about hard and physical, that's the Memphis Grizzlies. And they really missed Mike Conley in game 1. It was a huge reason why I believe Golden State was able to win. Mike Conley played in game 2. And, when you're talking about a guy like Mike Conley, it's not so much his numbers that he puts up, especially in this series, but I think it's more about what he brings to the team. He's a guy that sets the offense. He can penetrate, he can dish, he can finish. But another underrated fact about him is his defense. And I think if you saw game 2, you saw what Mike Conley's effect and his presence on the court can do to a guy like Steph Curry. When you hold a Golden State Warriors to only 90 points, that's saying something. Golden State was one of the leaders, if not the leader, in points per game. Memphis held them to 90 points on their home court. So Memphis defensively can hang with the Golden State Warriors. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough for them to win the series, but I could definitely see the series going 7 games because of how hard Memphis plays and how hard it is to physically match up with them. But I do think Golden State has just enough. They have a pretty decent bench. I just think that in the end, even though you have guys like Tony Allen, I mentioned Mike Conley, and they play pretty good perimeter defense. I just think in the end that Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green are going to be a little too much to handle. The Grizzlies are going to give them everything that they want, I believe. But I just think at the end, Golden State's going to win in 7 games. But I tell you, it's going to physically drain them, I think, to get through this series. But I think they will eventually move on in 7, and they'll move on to the Western Conference Finals. And who will they play in the Western Conference Finals? Currently, the Clippers and the Rockets are battling it out. I must say, it was very surprising that the Clippers were able to win Game 1 in Houston without Chris Paul. I didn't think they could do it. And what does that say about the Rockets? You're at home. You have the home court advantage. You have the crowd going crazy. You're well rested. You're going against a team without one of their main superstars, and you lose Game 1. I tell you, I can't quite wrap my head around why they lost the game, except for the fact that the Clippers, they really play smart basketball, and that's really what the effect Doc Rivers has on this team. Doc Rivers was a former point guard, and he can see things that, like, just when Chris Paul's out there on the floor. So he was able to, I think, help this team focus, and he was able to get them to do the things that they need to do necessary to beat the Rockets. The Rockets, they've been good all season. James Harden has been spectacular. But the bottom line is nothing about Houston after James Harden really jumps out at you. There's nothing about this Rockets team after James Harden that you really fear. Yeah, you can say that they missed Patrick Beverley a little bit, but I think Patrick Beverley's missed more on the defensive side than on the offensive side. And I think that Houston is in a little bit of trouble here. I mean, I don't know if Chris Paul is going to play Game 2 tonight, but even if he doesn't, I think the Clippers, I think they're the favorites to win this series. If I don't want to disrespect Houston by saying 5, but I don't know. I just feel like the Clippers are the more superior team. They're the chemistry speaking, I think they're the better team. And talent-wise, I think if Chris Paul can get back out there on the floor, I just don't see where Houston can measure up. I mean, do you put James Harden? If Chris Paul is able to come back and be close to 100%, do you put James Harden on Chris Paul? Do you risk wearing out James Harden chasing around Chris Paul to where he can't contribute on the offensive end? That could be a big deal, and that's something that Kevin McHale is going to have to address with his team. But if you're not going to get big contributions from your bench like Jason Terry, Josh Smith, and those guys, I just don't see the Rockets really having a chance in this series. I think that they probably win Game 2 just on the strength that they lost Game 1 at home. I think they come back with a strong effort. But I don't know if they get one in Los Angeles. And if that's the case, I really, like I said, I don't want to disrespect Houston by saying 5. But whether it's 5 or 6 games, I think the Clippers move on to the Western Conference Finals and set up a series with the Golden State Warriors. And I tell you, that would be a fun series. And that would be something that's going to be not so easy to analyze, but it'll be fun looking at all the key points of that potential series. All right, the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. Well, it went down this past Saturday. I tell you, a lot of people, they were disappointed. I was left, I wouldn't say disappointed, but maybe to the point to where I felt like there could have been more with the fight. Anybody who paid the $100 to watch it on pay-per-view, I can certainly understand their frustration. I thought the fight provided a lot of good things, but Pacquiao, I think, came up short. He didn't throw enough punches. He had his opportunities. That 4th and 6th round, he really came on strong, but I just felt like when he had his opportunities, but he just didn't take advantage of them. And now it's being said that he's injured. He hurt his rotator cuff. So a potential rematch could be maybe a year down the line or so, but I don't know if a lot of people are going to pay another $100 to see another Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. Mayweather just proved to be the superior boxer. You know, he's not a guy. I didn't think he was ever going to knock Pacquiao out, but he's just a superior boxer, and he proved it. And kudos to Mayweather for his performance and beating Pacquiao. The best thing I liked about the fight was that it wasn't controversial. Mayweather won the fight, plain and simple. And anybody who disagrees with that, you can treat it like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. Wabbit season, I'm going to say duck season. All right, well, that's it for this edition of My Eye on Sports. You know, it's probably going to be a down week, but the NBA playoffs still be going on. I'll probably come back with another video when the conference finals get started, so be on the lookout for that. Also, before I sign off, this weekend is Mother's Day, and I just want to send a special shout out to my mother, Mrs. Estelle Kennard. I just want to say Happy Mother's Day. I hope you enjoy it. I love you. Words can't describe how much I love you. I hope you enjoy your day. Also, to my future mother-in-law, Miss Paulette Smith, I want to send her a Happy Mother's Day wish as well. And Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Guys, take care. Thanks for viewing. See you next time.